Well, it's official. China and Taiwan are in a drone race. Sort of like how the United States and the Soviet Union were in a space race, Taiwan wants to try building more and more drones to potentially combat or attack China with the use of their drones. Now, believe it or not, Taiwan actually does develop and build their own drones. This is a video from 2023 where Taiwan is boasting their new drones they just developed and built.
These drones are the newest additions to Taiwan's defense. The Zhongshan Institute of Science and Technology, the country's largest weapons maker, unveiled a new series of radar and combat drones designed for military use on Tuesday.
Now, the question is, what exactly is going on? Why does Taiwan all of a sudden want to develop into drones? Because a lot of people have been critical against Taiwan that, hey, look, they're fully relying on the United States and other partners in the Pacific region to stand up for them. However, Taiwan is paying attention to Ukraine like the rest of the world.
Ukraine's success in using drones to push back the Russian invasion has shed light on how valuable this technology is. And now, Taiwan is looking to boost its own drone production.
Now stick with me in this video because we're going to also go over a tactic called the swarm that could happen to Taiwan or Taiwan could do to some potential Chinese units. Before we get into that, what you need to realize is that China holds 76% of the market with just one company called DJI. And these drones also are used in Ukraine by the Russians and the Ukrainians. They're used for reconnaissance, direct action, etc. Now, to be fair, just because China holds the world's market when it comes to drones doesn't mean that all of these drones are used in a military sense. But nonetheless, China has the ability to mass produce drones if needed to use on Taiwan. And Taiwan knows that, and they're seeing and comparing what's happening to Ukraine and Russia. Because everybody thought Russia was going to absolutely smash Ukraine, but then there was a realization that Ukraine was like, hey, we can just use these drones and pinpoint exact targets within trench lines. We can use reconnaissance methods to guide artillery, and Ukraine has really been adapting and showing the world how effective drones are, which is quite the contrast to the United States. When you look at the drone program for the United States, especially up into the early 2000s at the beginning of the Afghan-Iraq conflicts, America has always been very secretive and very elusive in how they use their drones and who gets to use their drones. Because America has this policy of we can touch you anywhere throughout the world from a guy sitting in Washington, D.C., controlling a drone and taking you out in Pakistan. Now look, the United States does have these reconnaissance drones and the capability of something called switchblades that will take you out directly, but nonetheless, the United States has never really fully got to implement their full drone strategy, incorporating, really being face to face with the enemy and launching a drone attack from only a mile away, let's say. Now, the United States has this tactic called the swarm, and they've never really got to implement it. And if you've ever played Call of Duty, you know what I'm talking about. A swarm is this, and by the way, we will be watching a video on the swarm. It's when you release drones in a combat space, and you give the drones the capability to swarm the space in unity. We're talking hundreds of drones to thousands of drones, swarming an area, causing mass confusion, and then eventually, potentially attacking potential targets. Targeted targets, not just like in the open like a cluster munition, taking out specific areas, specific targets. It's quite incredible. Let's go ahead and watch this video on the swarm tactic. So unfortunately, this video has copyright music, but nonetheless, I will commentate exactly what's going on. Essentially, what you're seeing is the swarm. These drones have been deployed by aerial means, and they're released in the area. Now, what's interesting is that the swarm is controlled in groups of like 10 to 100, and they're all working autonomously to find areas that might be important to the combat space. They're just causing chaos in the combat space. That's the only way I can truly really explain what a swarm is. Now again, what's really cool about the swarm is that even though you're deploying hundreds, and I've even seen videos with like thousands, these drones can work independent to target specific areas like this building right here. And then these can all be pre-programmed via satellite imagery, or in general, they can program them on the spot to find specific targets that might be important. Again, the purpose of the drone is to cause total chaos on the combat space. You can even see here all these blue dots are drones, and they're causing the swarm. Imagine you're on a combat or in a combat space, and all of a sudden you're looking up and seeing all of these drones potentially attacking you. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, and you don't know if they're going to come down and attack you. It seems silly, and maybe some of you are like, I don't get it. Why is that crazy? When you're seeing and looking up in the air just thousands of drones, I think you would be a little freaked out. Now, as far as actually implementing this swarm tactic, I can't find any evidence of where the United States has done this, but what I have seen is that Russia sort of has done this to Ukraine, where they launched a bunch of Iranian drones throughout the country and attacked specific areas. But again, that is very minute compared to what a swarm should and could be. Russia is only launching like 15 at a time. Again, the swarm is hundreds, even maybe thousands. This is a mass effort unit to completely disrupt the combat space. Now, right before we get to Taiwan, I want to mention this. The United States has had very minimal experience with dealing with counter-drone operations within the Afghanistan conflict. Towards like the very, very end of the conflict, we're talking like the last 3 years, the Taliban started to use drones in a reconnaissance sense, and some of them were even able to manipulate them in a direct action sense. But it was never on the level of what Ukraine and Russia are doing. But nonetheless, I thought it was important to mention that the United States does have a little bit of experience with dealing with these modified drones, and they were rather effective. I mean, I think anything is effective when you have to look up in the air and it takes your eyes away from what's in front of you. And in typical U.S. countermeasures, the United States military will always create or develop countermeasures if the troops are facing some sort of threat. Whether that's troops developing it on the ground, like smacking drones out of the air with a shovel, or it's providing soldiers with anti-drone means like you see in the picture here. Interesting enough, this is happening right now in Ukraine and Russia, where tanks and artillery pieces are covering themselves with these cages. Now, it's pretty much almost like an RPG cage, except they're using them for drones. Now, something else I want to address is what exactly are the type of drones that Taiwan is looking for? Are they looking for handhelds? Are they looking for drones that can launch from hundreds of miles away via satellite and GPS? The thing is that Taiwan essentially wants it all. The number that they gave was 3,400 drones by the year 2024. And that doesn't seem a lot, but consider this. These are combat-capable drones that, again, it's not the same as you just going to Walmart and buying this drone and then all of a sudden you have a military drone. No, these are drones that are compatible with the combat space, and a soldier sitting down on the ground and seeing exactly what that drone is seeing up in the air. Now, I can't find any evidence of what exactly Taiwan is looking for. It just seems like they want it all. They want handheld-type drones that can go out and take direct targets. They want reconnaissance-type drones. They want water drones. They want ground drones. Give me all the drones, people. Something else I want to mention is that China does have good drone capabilities. We're talking almost on par with the United States, and they probably will be on par with the United States within the next several years, especially considering China knows exactly what's going on, and they know that they need to start developing more and more drones. If you're unaware, China has a drone policy of anyone can have it, whether it's Ethiopia, whether it's Sudan, especially in Africa. They're really pushing a campaign in Africa to give away these drones. They're just giving away drones left and right, but they're also using the data and analysis of those countries and using it for their program. Where the United States has been very secretive and very selective on the scientists they work with, working with Boeing and Lockheed. Those are very capable companies. But when China is putting their drones in every single combat space possible and getting that direct data on what they need to work on or not work on, that's a big deal, because then we're also talking logistical use. China has to supply these countries with mechanical packages. They need to supply them with munitions. So there's a lot that goes into just making a drone. You have to create the policies. You have to create the logistics train to fix the drones and employ the drones. There's a lot that goes into it. And again, that's something Taiwan really needs to work on, especially considering they're sort of on an island and they're sort of on their own if the United States is not going to be there for them. So back to the main topic, can Taiwan stick up with China? Well, Taiwan really has to focus and really start to developing now their drone technology, because China is mass producing and they're working with all world partners. I mean, they are really cornering and holding this market. And Taiwan will always have safety and insurance with the United States. But I don't think Taiwan should necessarily only rely on that. I think they need to start developing their own drones. They need to start developing a budget to focus on drones, because as we're seeing in today's modern combat, drones are highly effective and you need to use drones. I mean, China, if they wanted to, could send an entire swarm over Taiwan, and what are they going to do about it? Anyway, my name is T-SPLY. Leave your comments and opinions down below. It looks like we are now entering the drone race era.